Welcome in to IllinoisPrep.com. Swimming recap, final swimming show of the school year in the brand new studios here in Oak Park. Skyler King, along with Brandon. As always, you can email me, Skyler at IllinoisPrep.com, and I'm on Twitter, Skyler iPrep. Let's jump right in here. We knew who was going to win this state meet. They did. It was New Trier, and it wasn't close. 218 points, the most points we've seen in our lifetimes. And, you know, they were mostly impressive. I mean, there were very few swims that they had that you were like, man, that was disappointing, which is what New Trier seems to do, especially in their pool.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about New Trier. They didn't have maybe that one guy. They didn't have the one guy that was coming into the meet that was just so much better than everyone else. You know, they had someone like Max Grodecki who ended up being quite a bit better, but going in, he was just as good as people like Max or Mike Reed, Sean Wolf,
Scott.
Any of those great freestylers. However, he definitely did separate himself from the field this year.
45-1.
And that was very impressive. But, going in, they were just a bunch of really solid swimmers, and they had a ton of them.
Yeah.
And that's what made them so much better as a team than everyone else.
Yeah, we said that all year. There's going to be the depth. Their second guy was going to score in a lot of events. They did. In some events, their second guy got third, like 500. And so that's just a recipe for a lot. I mean, they didn't even score two divers this year. There's plenty of years they scored two divers. And so, yeah, it was an onslaught. They ended up winning both free relays and not the medley, which was surprising. The medley was won on Friday in state record fashion by the runner-up to the state champion, Naperville Central, with Depew, Vandeventer, Weeks, May, and the breaststroker and the freestyler never even swam at state before.
Yeah, it was...
Or sectionals, for that matter.
It was a very exciting prelim session. A lot of fast swims. And starting out the meet with a state record, anytime you can beat a record from the year of the suit is always impressive, and it was just so fast. They started fast with a 23.0 backstroke leg and ended fast with a 20.5 from Pat May. Yeah. So, I mean, from top to bottom, they were just an unbelievably fast medley. And, it started with that for Naperville Central, and they kept going all the way even to the the last individual event, or the second to last individual event backstroke, where they're going into final seeded 1-2 in the backstroke.
Yep.
Naperville Central, it looked like they were running away with the meet the way they were swimming. And I remember a couple of people asked me, "Man, are they winning after prelims? I wonder what it's what the score is right now." Just because
close.
And after you score it out, you're going, man, they're down by like 50 points. And even though they looked so much better.
Well, especially because Lahane bottom in the 2. They had 2 top 6 IMers. Nobody in the 50, but they got Weeks in the fly. They got May in the 100. No one in the 5. So it was really just the 50 and the 500 where they didn't score anybody. Because then they have 3 top 6 relays, 1-2 in the backstroke, and Vandeventer in the breaststroke. So they were just consistent all meet long, and they didn't have a diver. But
so they didn't have nearly the depth. Their top guys were really looking good.
Yeah.
They were improving a ton from last year, and they were just looking sharp. They came to swim that day, and they did what they could. They didn't have the amount of swimmers at the state meet that they needed to win the meet, but they definitely did a lot with what they had.
Yeah, they scored, I think it was 176, which is like 20 points more than they scored last year when they won it. Yep. So those top 2 teams were historical in how many points they were scoring. I mean, you haven't seen 2 teams at the same state meet score that many points in a very long time.
Yeah. And that's one thing we were talking about, how it really was New Trier was going to win it. Naperville Central had no competition for second. And then the true race, or the true competition, was who was going to get third. And that ended up being a great competition between Loyola and U-High.
Yeah, and they were both in the top of the free relays, and the deciding factor really for me, and I sort of said this all year, if U-High gets a top 6 medley without John Williamson, they're looking really good for a trophy. They got top 6. They ended up getting 4th. Even though they were 6th, they made it in there by about 3/10 on Friday, but they did it without Williamson, and they got Williamson on 2 free relays to get in the top. And really their X factor was Billingsley, top 6 in the 50, 20.5 on free relays, and you know, that they had that second guy scoring in the top 6 that Loyola needed. Loyola had the diver, but they didn't have that second individual score top 6 in swimming, and that was really the difference.
Yeah, the depth of U-High was just a little bit better at a top-end level than Loyola this year. And, you know, going in, we knew that, you know, I couldn't call it until obviously the meet. You know, both those teams looked like they were going to be fighting it out for third place. And, you know, it definitely was an exciting end of the meet. It did really come down to that last relay. If U-High didn't have a good relay and ended up getting 6th, and Loyola did have a good relay and got, you know, 2nd or 3rd, you know, they ended up getting 2nd, but U-High
got 3rd
and ended up beating them. So,
well, then it was 50-48. And each of them had left was those 2 free relays. And going in, Loyola was 1 spot seated ahead of them. And so if it held that way, Loyola would win by 2. But, you know, U-High showed they were ready for prime time. They showed they were big time gamers because, heck, they were almost winning that 400 free relay. I think they were winning for a while.
The first 200, their first 2 guys, they led off with Williamson with, I think, a 46.0. And then they kept going. I think Mitchell was number 2, and he looked quick. He was surprised. He just made it even farther a lead after the first 50 of his swim.
I was surprised Mitchell didn't score individually, but he was tough on all their relays.
He definitely helped the relays a bunch. You know, their medley had a great fly split and great 50 split on their 200 free relay and a good 100 split on their 400 free relay. I mean, he was really a big help. You know, not everyone's going to be able to score individually, especially with how fast the year was. A 51.8 most years is going to be pretty close to scoring.
Yeah.
However, this year it almost took a 50 point just to score.
Yeah.
I believe 12th was like a 51.2 or 3 in prelims just to make it back. And that's, you know, that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know, last year when a 51.1 gets 4th place for it to take almost a 50.1 to make top 6 this year. So, and a lot of fast events.
Yeah. Stefanovic, though, as we sort of transition into the individuals, was one of 3 guys who was a double state champion. And I don't know when the last time was that we had 3 guys that were all double state champions, but he was one. The 50, 20.4, and 48.7 in the fly. Only a sophomore.
Just unbelievably fast in both of those, especially when you consider he is a sophomore. 2 more years to improve upon those times. You know, it's ridiculous. Some of these guys in the state meet this year. Another obviously double state champion, Danny Thompson, in the 200, 500 state record in the 500 with the 421.0. Set that in prelims and then reset that in finals. 421.0. Yeah, he was 21.4 in prelims, and then not the state record, but right at it with the 137.5 and the 200 free.
137.2 is the record there, and really, that was Kevin Overholt, who is, you know, about 2.5 seconds better than Thompson in 100 free, but with
probably about 2 seconds faster in a 50 free too.
But with a suit, is only 0.3 better than Thompson in the 200. Yeah,
Thompson can definitely hold it, and you know, I thought it was going to be a little bit better of a race with Williamson. Williamson just had, you know, he had an okay year, not really improving on last year's amazing year, but, you know, he did what he needed to do this year to get his team a trophy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you feel bad for a senior that doesn't have a better year, and I definitely do feel bad for a guy that doesn't improve from one year to the next, especially when you are at that level. It is very tough at that level, but, you know, he still had a pretty good year helping out his relays.
Yeah, and I mean, another senior that was in a similar spot is Jeff Depew. You know, a couple years tangling with Elliott in the IM. Actually gave him a decent go this year.
I thought, I'm not going to lie, at the freestyle leg, Depew was gunning for it.
Oh, yeah.
He did everything in his power to try to win that race, and it came down to the wire. And I think if Elliott did not see him that last 15 yards, I think Depew would have passed him right up, because Elliott was cruising in the free, and right when he turned and saw Depew coming at him, he picked it up to the next gear that obviously Elliott has, and finished off the race. But Depew definitely did what he could to try to win that race. It just wasn't enough.
And that's a 4-peat for Matt Elliott in the IM, the 3rd time that's ever been done in an individual event, and 7 state titles, because he got it done in the breaststroke in what was the best race of the day. We'll get to that in a second, but go back to Depew. Then he posts 50 flat on Friday.
Yep. With his teammate at a 50.6, I believe, in prelims. They're going 1-2 into finals.
And that ended up being the best time of the meet. But Sean Lehane, who, because of how good Naperville Central's been, couldn't even make the sectional lineup in the backstroke last year, is the state champion as a junior. I mean, that's just incredible. That had to be incredible for them in practice all year, the top 2 backstrokers in the state. And, you know, it shouldn't, I guess it shouldn't be that big of a surprise because Lehane beat Depew all year.
Yeah.
But still, you thought at the end that Depew was been there.
Because Depew's a big taper guy.
Yeah.
So is Lehane, apparently. But,
right.
you know, you see Depew every year at pretty much the state meet drop just these absurd amount of times. You know, go 156s or 57s in the IM all season. Then all of a sudden he's going 149. Or going 54s or 53s in the back to go 50 points. So, I mean, he's a big taper swimmer for how good of a swimmer he is. Usually those better swimmers don't drop as much because they're usually swimming at a higher level. But he's, you know, he's a machine, and especially for being how short he is, he really can rock those underwaters. And you know, it's definitely too bad that a senior can't walk away with the individual state championship, but you know, consolation prize, he gets a state record in the medley relay.
Yeah. And he was a team champion last year, so a lot of hardware for Jeff Depew in his career. Now, let me set this last one up, the breaststroke. On Friday in the medley relay, your breaststroker, Kevin Cortez, goes a 24.19 or something just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You said to me you think that might be a national record.
Yeah, if we get relay split national records, I think we should put that up on the board because I don't know if anyone's been a 23.9, so I'm sure that's got to be the quickest ever in the 50 breast.
And then he gets top 6 in the 50, which he's never even swum before at state.
Yeah, he missed the cut last year. Should then go 21.0 and actually make top 6.
And so then there's 2 heats of the breaststroke left, and I'll let you take it from there.
You know, after the day he's been having, I figured it was going to be a pretty good swim, you know. He'd never been under 56 in a high school season.
Okay.
I know he'd been 55 out of season before this year. And so, you know, I was hoping if he could break 55, get in that 54 range for the first time, it'd be a great swim. And he's coming up to the wall, and I'm going 52, 53. Yeah. And I'm like, he's about to touch the wall, and it's only 53. And obviously, you know, it's not perfect with how you're looking at it. There's a little delay, and touches and goes 54.00. And you're going
54.00, 50 state record, and just, you know, an unreal time. You know, less than a half second off the national record, which is 53.66, and you're going, all right, maybe around 2 of sophomore year, maybe they'll just split that. 2 and 2.
Yeah, and then the next heat comes, and you know, Elliott behind the block was just smiling at that time. I think that might have just psyched him up a little bit, and you know, he jumps in at the 50s, basically the exact same time going out. Comes back a little bit faster and goes 53.87 again, right by the national record, and resets his own, or takes away Cortez's record and gets and then breaks his record again for 53.80 in finals and beats Kevin Cortez by 0.2 or 0.3 seconds, and you know. That's the race everyone,
I think, or something.
Everyone was looking for.
Yeah. A ton of people left after that race.
That was kind of, how can you top that? And you couldn't.
But yeah, and that ends one of the truly great individual rivalries in Illinois state history. When we come back for overtime, we're going to be discussing the most surprising swimmer in a good way, the most surprising team in a good way, and some of the teams and individuals that had some disappointments during state weekend. As always, you can email me, SkylerIllinoisPrep.com, Twitter, SkylerIPrep. Come back for overtime, talking all the nitty-gritty of boys state swimming.